The Financial Huddle does not provide tax, legal, financial, or other professional advice. Listeners are encouraged to consult with their own advisors in these areas.
All right, everybody, huddle up. Play calls in. This is the Financial Huddle. Ready? Break.
Welcome back, Huddlers and Huddler Nation. It's time.
It is time.
Next episode of the Financial Huddle
Welcome
podcast.
back, everybody.
Yes. As always, I am joined by my esteemed colleagues, Mr. Brian Manier.
Hello, hello.
And Mr. Ryan Fleming.
It's good to be alive.
Oh, it's a good day.
You guys feeling good?
Every day you wake up is a good day.
All right. I love it.
All right. So one thing, we've talked a lot about, we've even kind of maybe brought up and touched upon it on previous podcasts is, talking about as financial planners and professionals, there are certain questions we just get asked all the time by our clients. And one of the first questions, or Brian, I'm going to throw this over to you. What's one of the questions we always get asked? And we've covered a bit.
Yeah. Can I retire?
Can I retire?
How am I looking?
Yep. Do I have enough to retire? Well, that kind of leads into the next question of not do I have enough to retire, but how much can I spend in my retirement given the assets that I have?
Yeah, per year.
Yeah. So that's going to take us into, and there's always been kind of an industry, not always, but there's an industry guideline or standard that you've heard. It's been around for quite some time. So today's topic is the 4% rule still the accepted rule of thumb in terms of distribution levels.
Mm-hmm. Hear that a lot.
Yeah. And what that means for our listeners is effectively when you're getting ready to retire or in retirement, that you can take out 4% of your portfolio balance each year and then subsequent years adjusted for inflation.
Yeah.
And effectively over a 30-year period, basically have enough so that you will not run out of money to cover that 30-year retirement period.
But that wasn't always the rule.
Nope.
So it originated.
Wasn't always the rule. So we're gonna give a little history lesson today. Little history lesson.
Professor Ed today.
Instead of stats, it's history.
History time.
So we're changing it up a little bit.
History time. We need a jingle for that.
And this is kind of an interesting background. And Ryan, you're very familiar with it. And this was the whole 4% rule was created by an individual named William Bengen.
Mm-hmm. Old Bill.
Bill Bengen.
Bill Bengen.
Double B. Some people, his friends call him Double B.
Bill Bengen. B squared.
Double B. And what's really interesting is you think, okay, he's in the financial industry profession, so probably spent most of his life in that career and everything else. Well, what's so interesting is you go back and look at his background. This is an individual that actually graduated from MIT. And not only did he graduate from MIT, his degree was in aeronautics and astronautics. His early part of his career was as an aerospace engineer. Okay,
he's infinitely smarter than us.
Yes,
all three combined.
So obviously, MIT aerospace engineer. That's a pretty intelligent guy. Now we probably wouldn't then basically take the next step to say, oh, he'd make a great financial planner, right?
No,
but certain things happened in his life. He got involved in a family bottling business that sold at some point, and he decided he made a change in the early '90s. Went into basically investment managing, financial planning. And one of the first things that really bothered him and that he really noticed was the clients asking that question is, how much can I spend in my retirement?
Oh, yeah. As an engineer, probably drove him nuts.
And he couldn't answer it.
He had to get down to the...
Because there was no factual, this is the percentage. Yeah. Everyone can do it with a high level of probability. So he really, dug his heels in and did an extensive, up to that point, never heard before, level of research on historical data of returns in the market based upon different portfolio mixes. And what I mean by that, 50% equities, 50% bonds, or 60% equities, 60% bonds, kind of that fixed income category. And out of all that, what basically came out, he wanted to get to a very 90% or higher level of probability that if you took this percentage out, that it would last through your retirement, which once again was classified under that 30 years.
Okay, yeah. Yep.
So that's the birth of basically the 4% rule came about at that time.
That was the year I graduated.
Well,
1994?
yeah, it was 1994.
Yeah.
And when you think about it,
kind of date myself, huddlers.
but it's not that long ago.
Right.
I mean, relatively speaking, in the whole financial history of our marketplace, everything else, not that long ago. Well, has anything changed for you since 94?
Quite a lot. Look at my hair.
All right. Case in point. But,
My hair.
Not only has your hair changed, but the markets have changed. A lot of things when we talk about investments, technology has changed significantly. There's far more options and diversification models and everything else. So if you've been listening to, what I call the financial talking heads in the marketplace, there's been, ongoing discussion about, what is an accepted rate of return. Because ultimately, when we're doing retirement income and distribution planning, that's something we talk about, right? Okay, how much can I take out, and will that last through my lifetime? And all right, are we just using a flat percentage, or how are we going about doing that? What's really interesting and kind of, moved us towards having this as a topic is BB, Mr. William Bengen, has actually come out. And
he's revamped.
He's amended and revamped that to say, okay, rather than 4%, I feel right now that number should be 4.7%.
Yep. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I think in doing a little bit of research on that, I think the reason why that is yes, things do evolve, and I think he's basically seen that we as investors have a lot more options, more diversified options, whether it be international funds or different types of, fund, ETFs. And so we have a better array of options to make our money last a little bit longer.
Yep.
And so I actually give him credit for going back in and kind of redoing the math again to kind of keep it status quo and apropos to what's going on in our culture. 94, versus now, a little bit different, right? So, but I think he also, another reason why he did this is because he also says that it's not a blanket 4.7. You have to look at the kind of the economic environments or the market valuation at the time that you start to pull the money out, right? So if the market's really high, maybe you take out a little bit more.
Yep.
If you start pulling money out and the market's down, maybe you have to take a little bit less.
So what really, those types of things, are guidelines. And on the other side of the equation, everyone's probably familiar with the name Susie Orman. You may have good things to say about her, bad things, or maybe it's a mix of things you have to say about her. But Susie's come out and said that the number's actually 3%.
Yeah.
So significantly different than, the what I would call the creator of that 4% rule, who's now actually going upwards. Susie Orman basically believes, well, we're living longer lifespans. There's more market unpredictability. There's a lot more going on.
She's trying to give like a little bit of a fudge factor for that stuff, right?
So she's being, I would say, more ultra conservative, saying things are more complicated nowadays. There's a lot of those types of events. But at the end of the day, then you look at that and say, well, all right, well, do I believe Susie Orman at 3%? Or, hey, this guy actually created this, and William Bengen now says 4.7.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that, Ryan?
Well, one is
that?
I just think it's interesting how people actually get into our industry. Bengen was an aerospace engineer.
Yeah.
I played professional baseball.
Yeah.
You came from a different background. You came from
I came from financial pretty much. As a commercial lender and then CFO and but different. Yeah, you're right.
Fascinating to me how people actually get in. Thank God that he did get into the industry because that's that's pretty profound mark on our industry here. The other thing is whether it's Bengen or Orman or whoever else is out there, I think they're all wanting to make sure that people don't run out of money. All right, I think that's end of the day. That's what they're trying to quell. You could even throw somebody like old Dave Ramsey. He's been on record saying that you can have a sustainable withdrawal rate of 8%, which has raised a lot of eyebrows from other people out there in the industry, like Dr. Wade Pfau, who's like the foremost expert on retirement distribution planning. So, who do you believe? What's the right math? But let's put this into context. So let's use Susie Orman for example. So for our listeners out there, a lot of times when you go to retire, your only stream of income might be Social Security. There might be some people that have pensions, maybe a combination of both. But let's just say a high percentage of the time, Social Security, a pension, or a combination of both is not going to be enough to help people retire at some kind of desired standard of living. So let's throw some math on that. So
and the data shows that Social Security is only going to cover 40% for most people.
Exactly.
So they need 60% from something else.
And most don't have a pension.
So let's just
right.
say, again, this may not, don't hold me to this exact math. Let's use round numbers.
Yeah.
Let's say you have a desired lifestyle of $100,000 a year between you, your spouse, your Social Security payments. Maybe you have $60,000 of income, maybe a small pension, couple Social Security payments. Well, you have a gap of $40,000. Okay, so let's apply that $40,000 gap, income gap, to your retirement, and let's use Susie Orman's 3%. So the day you retire, in order to create $40,000 of sustainable income for 30 years adjusted for inflation, you would have to have $1.333 million in the bank the day you retire at the 3% that she says. Conversely, let's use Bill Bengen's updated 4.7. So in order to create $40,000 of income to last 30 years that's adjusted for inflation, you would have to have $851,063 of income the day you retire to pull out 4.7% and make it last your entire life, a 30-year period, like you said. Okay, and somewhere in between. All right, market's high, market's low, whatever. But those are some barometers to think about. But I also want to submit that there's maybe another option. A lot of people ask, well, are those the only options, right? And the answer is no. And over the past, several years, the past few decades, there's been an incredibly viable option that's called a fixed indexed annuity that creates a guaranteed lifetime paycheck forever. And that's an incredible thing, because sometimes we hear annuities are bad, or I got taken to the cleaners from an annuity, and again, there's all different flavors of annuities. It just boils down to, do you have the right tool to do the job? And a lot of times people are sold the wrong tool to do the job. But if you get the right tool and you have the right guaranteed lifetime pension annuity, it can change the game. So I'll give you an example. So I did some math. I went to the one of the highest rated carriers in the entire country, an A+ carrier in the country.
Is this a life company, annuity company?
This is a life insurance company. Okay, and I won't name the name, but it is an A+ carrier. You can't get better ratings across the board. What would it have taken to create $40,000 of guaranteed income? Guaranteed lifetime income,
not probability income,
which means like if I died,
certain income,
guaranteed certainty. Means that, and if I died, if I preceded my wife, she would get that guaranteed the rest of her life. So I did the math. It would take $563,380 to create $40,000 of guaranteed income, even if we lived to 120 years old. Now, let me preface this. This is very important for compliance reasons. That is based on today's interest rate environment, the rates, the payout factors, which can change naturally with the culture.
The ages of the clients, what ages they're retiring, everything.
But in 2026, as we sit here today, that would be a good idea for you to think about of what was needed to create some guarantees and certainty. So, for example, that would be almost $770,000 less to solve the gap that Susie Orman says at 3%, and it would be just under $300,000 less than Bill Bengen's increased 4.7%. So what could you do? So you could solve that income with way less money and have way more money on the sidelines to do what? Invest, to try to hedge inflation, to have opportunities, to literally have the money invested that you have tangibility to.
And to be more aggressive.
Because you have confidence, you have guarantees.
Have more of a growth focus.
Yes, and so a lot of people, they don't understand this. They should, and they should count it as a truly viable option. And so, in that, I just wanted to throw some metrics, some stats out there, but I know there's a few other things to consider as you're thinking about, well, should I do the 3, the 4.7, should I do the 6%, should I do 8, like Dave Ramsey said, or should I buy one of these guaranteed, lifetime pensions, annuities?
And the big thing that we always talk about is sequence of returns risk.
Humongous.
Yeah, and for those of you that don't know what that is, that basically just means when you lost value in a retirement account because of a bad market, once you take that distribution out, you can never make it up when the market goes back up.
That's a
Because it's
huge
gone.
risk.
It's gone. It's huge.
That's a huge risk in retirement.
So just think of it from a logical standpoint. If you have $1 million in a retirement account and a bad market happens and you lose 15%, and some people would think, well, 15% is not that much. Now you have that 3% or 4%, 4.7% draw, whatever it is, from 850,000.
Yeah, no longer $1 million.
That no longer $1 million. That changes the game.
Well, that sets a death
entirely.
spiral, doesn't it?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And so when we do retirement planning, and we do all kinds of services like tax management and whatever those things are, but one of the number one things is when we're looking at you're going to be taking income in a relatively short amount of time, you have to mitigate that sequence of returns risk. I think we would say that's very important. One of the most
incredibly important
Yep.
out there,
that you can
listeners.
do. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So let me give you some stats from BlackRock, and they put this piece together a number of years ago. So let's say that you had $1 million and you had this at age 65, and you put that in a retirement account, and you got an average of 7% from 65 to 90.
So for 30 years, bro, almost 25
years, right? So average of 7%. And you would think, well, it doesn't matter. You're going to end at the same spot.
Right.
But that $1 million, the person, each of these three examples is going to take $60,000 a year for their
income gap.
Income
Yeah,
gap.
that's their distribution.
That's your distribution. But let's say each of those three, even though it's on an average of 7%, the paths are different. So path one, the person has a rate of 22%, 15%, 12%, and then -4, -7 in that order, and that pattern repeats itself over and over again. Okay? Person number two, same exact numbers, but a different order. -7, -4, 12, 15,
Kind
22.
of inverted it. You inverted it.
You inverted it. That pattern repeats itself over and over again.
Okay.
And then the third option, it's just straight 7%,
Linear.
which would never happen, but
Yeah,
it
never-
illustrates
yeah.
it illustrates
The return
point.
of the market is never linear.
Because a lot of people think, oh,
Right.
what's your average? And when they model it, they just do a linear or whatever
Yeah.
percent. And we know that that's never going to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
But this is what's interesting. When you look at those three examples, at the age of 90, option number one, after taking $60,000 a year, has a balance of a little over $1 million.
Okay.
Okay? 7%.
Yep.
7% average of option two, they actually ran out of money in their mid 80s.
So
And that was negative returns in the early years.
Yes, -7 and -4. And by the way, you wouldn't think that's really
That's not a
significant.
huge-
No, that's
right.
not a huge market drop.
Right.
Same average 7%, but because of the order, it changes things dramatically.
that's great mathematical evidence.
It is.
It's not an opinion. It's math.
That's math. This is not a strategy. This is just how the math works.
Right.
So with the same 7% average, option one has $1 million to leave to their heirs. Option number two, they ran out of money.
They ran out.
Before the age of 90.
Yeah.
And then if you go the straight 7%, there's a $430,000 balance.
Somewhere
at
in
end
the
of that.
middle.
Yeah. And so could the 4%, 7, or the 3%, could it work? Possibly.
Yeah.
But,
Maybe.
It did for that first person on that example.
but that's kind of the point. And
Right.
so we like to educate when we're working with somebody that these things could happen. So sequence of returns is a real thing. We want to make sure that we mitigate it because it could have a dramatic impact negatively on your retirement.
I mean, let's be honest. I mean, most people are wired to be risk adverse. You know,
That's right.
that's kind of their default mechanism in life is they would probably get more emotional if they lost 50,000 than if they won 50,000.
Yeah, they're more upset than how happy they would be if they.
But they still want a 20% rate of return.
Yeah, well, that's a
All right,
different
yeah,
podcast.
Tune into a couple weeks. We'll do that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's great stats, Brian.
Yeah.
Yeah. But really, I mean, in summation here, as we kind of try to wrap this up, we talked about, probability versus certainty. And
I like those
as
words.
financial professionals, we like to minimize unnecessary risk when it comes to
Amen.
retirement income and distribution planning. So that's what we try to put some certainty into that. The probability is what you just went through on sequence of return. There's a probability you could lose money in the early years or lose money in the later years. That's going to impact that bucket of what you have significantly and what it enables you to do. So we talk a lot about, is it 4%, 4.7, is it 7% or whatever that is? Well, it's really dependent upon the individual circumstances of each client that we work with. So once again, what do we come back to?
Come on in.
Make sure you come on in.
Yep.
Make sure you sit down. Let's look at what you have. and let's look at a path forward. What is the best?
What feels most comfortable?
What are the best strategies, and what gets you to where you want to be? Once again, quote unquote, without taking that unnecessary risk.
And there's no right or wrong, but I would say, and I think you guys would both agree, most people that we talk to would rather have that certainty.
Yeah.
When they know the income stream has stopped.
Exactly. All right. Yeah. So
good stuff.
Huddlers, thanks for taking the time. We enjoyed ourselves as always, and I hope you did too. Once again, thanks for listening or thanks for watching. The two different ways that we present this podcast, and we've talked about it before. If there's topics or different things that you'd like us to discuss on this, please let us know. So until next time, signing out.
Thanks for tuning in
and subscribe. Take care.
Take care, guys.